Welcome back to the Tasting Room, Season 2, Episode 2. Bobby Benjamin brought the stuff today. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. So let's start with this.
Yep.
I never know people's official title. I thought Ben was like executive chef of the McNally's Group.
Yep.
And he gave me his long title, VP of Culinary, whatever. I was like, all right. So I'm just going to ask, what is your official title?
I'm the culinary director. But
Okay.
you know, being culinary director to me, and I think that you just wear lots of hats. I mean, especially after the pandemic, or kind of like towards the, we're kind of like coming out of the pandemic. It's been a lot of rebuilding. So there's just, you wear lots of hats. You do what you got to do to get to where you need to be. So
that's culinary director over 3 spots, right?
3 spots. Also, we did pastries for Topeka as well.
Okay, so pastries for Topeka, and then you have the food that comes out of Hodges, the food that comes out of Open Container, and then I would assume the one that takes the majority of your attention would be everything that comes out of Lowood.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Lowood is fantastic.
Thank you.
So let's start with this. You came to Tulsa from Louisville.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Absolutely. Louisville.
Okay.
That's right.
I've been to a few Kentucky Derbies, and
I'm
so
proud
people
of
say
you.
Louisville, and I'm like,
proud of you, man.
nope, it's Louisville.
I'm proud of you. That's good.
What's the food scene in Louisville? How would you describe it?
It's interesting. I think that it's really cool. It's kind of like there's some amazing restaurants there. It's interesting because there's still people focusing on local.
Mm-hmm.
There's people focusing on bourbon, but it's kind of an in between. I mean, sometimes you'll have restaurants there that don't focus on bourbon at all. They may be focusing on sake.
That'd be interesting.
Which is really kind of cool. But then you also have, one of the best Latin restaurants I've ever eaten in my life is in Louisville, Kentucky.
No kidding.
Which is crazy, right?
I didn't know that.
So I think there's things that are happening there that's really unique and it's different. But it's so many restaurants. And what I mean by so many restaurants, I mean like when I came to Tulsa, I'm like, there's not that many restaurants here.
Okay.
And that will tell you the perspective because like there's so many restaurants in Louisville. I mean, to the point where, you literally cannot drive without seeing 5 to 6 restaurants on every single.
And not only that, but some of the distilleries, like I've heard great things about the Willett kitchen.
Right.
The kitchen that's at Willett. And I know some other distilleries have kitchens as well. So
that's right. And that's a new thing. That's a new thing. So that's been happening for probably the past 3 or 4 years. That's been a big development. I think that Maker's Mark really started that, to be honest, just because like Maker's was super, super unique at the time because you could go to Maker's and pick a barrel and they would bring you in for lunch and they would have a chef there and the chef would produce something great and use local ingredients, and then also would be aware of dietary restrictions. And so it was a win-win-win for everyone. I think that some of those distilleries copied for sure.
That tends to happen in the restaurant world
right.
just a little bit. So would you say Louisville's where you cut your teeth in the kitchen? Or did that happen before then?
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit of everywhere. It's been a journey. I started washing dishes when I was 12. Before that, I had a knife in my hand at 8 years old. So going from having a knife in your hand at 8 years old to being in the kitchen, helping out at 10 years old. My mom dated a guy.
Young.
Yeah, my mom dated a chef that had his own restaurant. So I worked there on the weekends and, he gave me $20 here and there, that kind of thing. And then 12 years old, washing dishes, prep cooking. By the time I was 14, I was on the line cooking. By the time I was 16, I had keys to a restaurant. I'd go by the owner's house. They'd give me keys and I would do breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And this was in Rhode Island?
No, this was, I lived half my childhood in Rhode Island and then we moved to Tennessee. So this was in Bell Buckle, Tennessee in the middle of nowhere.
I was going to say, I couldn't point that out on a map.
I graduated high school with 47 students.
Wow.
So that would tell you how small it was. One flashing light in the town, one restaurant in the town. A volunteer fire department and no police. So we got away with a lot of things. Yeah, at a young age,
crazy.
Cooked. I think that I worked for Jeanette and Heidi Heineke there. It was a mother-daughter that owned the restaurant. Nothing was ever clean enough, organized enough. So they really gave me some great structure and foundation. So I think that, cut my teeth there, cooking in, New York, Chicago, Beverly Hills, Louisville, Nashville. I've cooked in a lot of different places, staged in a lot of different cities as well. So
I'm going to ask about your inspiration as a chef now that you're running restaurants. But back then, what was your inspiration to have a knife in your hand at 8?
We were just poor.
Fair enough. Fair
Like,
enough. Yeah.
it's like so it's one of those things that like you look back and you're like, wow, this was amazing because we we were always trying to look at different odds and ends jobs, parents would work a job, but then they were trying to figure out how to get other money. So other hobbies turned into money. And it was back in the day when there was, we would trap. And so we would do, put the canoe and go downstream, set traps.
No kidding.
And then we would skin, flesh, tan, and sell to the pelt company. And the pelt company would turn around and sell the furs, to the fur companies, and everyone wore fur coats back then.
You lived like a true Tennessee, like
Rhode Island. It's crazy because it's all like northeast, southeast. I think I kind of got the best of both worlds when it comes to cooking.
Who was I thinking of? Was it who wore the coon hat? It's like a folklore.
Oh, I forgot.
I know, I'm forgetting his name for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like that is what I'm picturing in my mind when you're like skinning and selling pelts and that kind of stuff.
I mean, we were a kid, and it was interesting because even at a young age, it was cool to be able to just be guided in a way where you were like, I remember, you'd have people that were not handling things properly, and they were doing it for sport. And I never forget being told, those guys are doing it for sport. Don't ever do that.
Interesting.
And it was more like the respect towards like, we're going to use 100% of the animal. And it was interesting because, we were poor. So we did eat, most of what we skinned, so it was like, and some of it was gross and some was like, it's doable,
It tastes like chicken.
Right. It's like whatever. Right. So I found it very, very interesting. And so when I look back at it now, I think that I didn't really think about it through my 20s really that much, which was interesting. My 20s was really just like grinding and going and cooking my face off and working long hours. And, staging was really, really in back then, so a lot of people stage, work for free, so, if you were on the clock at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, clocking in, you were there at 9 o'clock in the morning prepping. So it was all about an experience of learning. It was like, how do I learn? And you felt behind because at the same time you would read books and you were inspired by other countries, and you'd watch a lot of these chefs that they start at 12 and 13 years old. Some start at 10 or 11 years old, whatever, and you still felt behind because in the very beginning of any cook's career, I think that you're always figuring out how much you don't know, and then as you get older, you realize that it's just an industry that you constantly are just learning.
I was going to say, it has to be endless, the amount that you...
It's endless. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, for example, you could literally lock yourself in a room for a whole day and learn so much knowledge, and then 2 years later forget half of it.
Right.
So it's absolutely amazing. Just to kind of like go through this journey. I mean, this year is 30 years of being in a kitchen. And it's nice. It's nice to be able to say that I'm 42 years old, but I've actually literally have been in a kitchen for 30 years.
That's unreal.
So it's exciting, in a way of just knowing it's a journey, and knowing that I'm very, very fortunate. And I look back at some of those hard times and know that it was actually a blessing now, because to be able to know that I was able to practice at such a young age, a lot of people can't do that anymore.
So I wish this was smell-o-vision. This camera. I mean, it is a nice new 12K camera, but it doesn't have smell-o-vision yet.
Right.
Those cookies smell amazing, but I think we have to start with the oysters. So what's special about the oysters that you brought today? These
are rock reserves. I mean, the reserve family, rock family, they really, really, really focus on the best oysters in the nation. One of, I would say, top 2 oysters that you can get in the States right now. So
luckily you brought, is that a shucking knife? Is that what that's called?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And now this might be hard. We'll try to zoom in a little bit. What's the proper way if you go to the store or you go to Bodine's Market, you buy oysters, you take them home and you don't know what you're doing?
You want me to go ahead and shuck?
Yeah, shuck a couple, and let's figure out. Here's a couple napkins if we need them too.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
So what's the proper way to shuck an oyster?
So the thing is, when I shuck an oyster,
I'll move this.
So when I shuck an oyster, I'm literally just gonna go into the very tip of this oyster, the bevel, and then what I'm doing is I'm gonna go super, super light. It's just lightly pressured. You don't have to shuck them hard. So you can see how this just popped open.
Right.
Just real easy. So as it pops open easy, you're going to flip it up like that.
Just you let the knife do the work.
You let the knife do the work, and then you're going to pop this off. Okay?
That was clean.
So you see how super clean it is, right?
Well done.
And then at the same time, this liquid that's in here, this is natural. This is the ocean, okay? The thing is, to me, I look at the oyster, to me is like, this is beautiful. So I take the muscle right off the bottom, and then it's ready to go. Now, a lot of times what you'll see is when you see a lot of people shucking that oyster aggressively and they flip it, it's because they actually split that belly. Okay. So if you handle this with care, I mean, these are expensive oysters.
Sure.
Too. They're not cheap, and they shouldn't be. I don't think any food should be cheap.
Did you say where they came from?
So these are off the coast of Boston.
Off the coast of Boston.
Yeah, Massachusetts. And so now you see that, and it's beautiful, right?
That is.
And it's simple. It's clean. And at the end of the day, you don't really need anything. I mean, when I eat an oyster like this, I don't even want a cracker. I don't really need anything.
You can go down the hatch with it, man.
And I mean, one of the things that the reason why I brought this today is because one of the favorite things I wanted to talk about was like really like, one, we're getting oysters over at Hodges. To be able to say that I'm able to do this at Hodges is amazing. It's like, again, it's almost like unreal.
That is.
It's like, it's so surreal to be able to be like, I get to use these oysters. And I just moved here a year ago.
Right.
That kind of deal. The other thing is too, is I did bring a caper mignonette. Okay. To me, capers are one of the most beautiful bourbon pairings that you could ever think of in your entire life.
I've never thought of that. The saltiness, the brininess.
It's so beautiful. And usually the lower the proof, it will go with seafood.
Interesting.
So if you do capers and seafood, like I've done capers and tuna before, and paired it with Basil Hayden.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's like just real clean. But you should try this. You want to try this oyster?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll start that one for you.
Just straight down the hatch. I love how much ocean is in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it sounded beautiful. Might have to edit out the sound of that one.
I think it sounds great, man.
Man, that is so good. The brininess, the saltiness.
Super, super clean.
Man. Yeah, I can see why that's a special oyster for sure.
It's so special, right? So that's what I get excited about is that oyster. And
are you gonna have one too? Are you? Am I gonna be the only one that eats one?
No.
Come on.
Listen, if you're gonna make sounds, I'll make sounds too. There you go.
Am I slurping the oyster sound?
There's nothing wrong with slurping, man.
That is true. All right. So while you're shucking that one, before we get to what you're doing at these spots here in Tulsa, what put Tulsa on your map? So you're in Louisville.
Yep.
Born Rhode Island, moved to Tennessee. You end up in Louisville.
Yep.
How did Tulsa hit your map?
So I had a restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky, and we were in the process of like, okay, what's next, especially with the pandemic, and so we started following this. We started following this church called Transformation Church.
Okay,
I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. Started in North Tulsa. It's in South Tulsa now, and I started watching. Pastor Mike.
I was going to say, is that Mike Todd? That is Mike Todd's, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was probably a good 6 months in, and we were like thinking about like where are we going to live, and we just my wife and I, we just prayed about it. And we were just like, where do we go? And we were like, you know what, we're led to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so we moved here a year ago, and it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, just the people that I work with. Just phenomenal people, just everything, all the doors that open. I think that, and even to be able to live in Tulsa, it's a gem. That's one thing that I realized more than anything is like, I don't really want to tell anybody that I live here.
Keep it quiet.
And keep it super, super quiet because it is so, it's very, very, it's beautiful. In a whole different way. I mean, I've been able to experience even some different ingredients I've been able to cook with. I go to the market every single Saturday, and to be able to say like, I don't think I've ever had bok choy before. I don't think I've ever had cabbage before.
Nice,
I don't
yeah.
think I've ever had, it's like when you start thinking about that, because you start trying all these different ingredients that are so tender, and you're just like, I've never experienced this anywhere I've ever lived.
Well, one of the dishes I had when I went into Lowood last night that I don't know how long it's on your menu, but it's, the summer squash blossom. I mean, it was, I'm assuming you got those at the farmer's market, or you can coming up soon, in the next little bit.
Mean, those were from Chef's Garden.
Okay.
And that was they're based out of Huron, Ohio. It's
Gotcha.
#1 organic farm in the country, my opinion. And not only is it the best, I've been working with them for years. I mean, a lot of your chefs from around, around the world, they do their dinners there, and they produce the best vegetables. So yeah, it's amazing.
Gotcha. I know I have seen squash blossoms at the Tulsa Farmers Market before. I just don't know when that actually happened. So I wanted to wash the brininess of the oysters down with.
Sure.
Now this is interesting. We were talking about this before we started. So this is Blue Note, which here's what confuses me. And I'm enough of a bourbon fan. I should understand the difference here. So it's crafted in Memphis, but it has Green River Distilling from Owensboro, Kentucky on the label. So it must be one of those, aged in Kentucky, but distilled in
That's right.
Tennessee. Is that what it is?
That's right.
But this was in Warehouse H at Green River Distilling, which got hit by, now I don't know what year this was. You said you were there. It was hit by the tornado. Right. And this is one of the surviving barrels from that tornado.
Right. I think that it was interesting because I remember that happening. And I think that, it's interesting what can make local news and what makes national news. But that local news felt like national news for a whole week, in Kentucky.
Sure.
And so, and it's devastating, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize how tight knit that the distillery family. So every single of like the OG, the old school distilleries, they're all like friends and family with each other. They all support each other.
I mean, they've been doing it forever.
Yeah, and they've been doing it since they weren't making any money doing it.
Right.
So I think that's what's interesting too. And when you look at like all these people, whether you're talking about Woodford, Makers, Wild Turkey, whoever, they all know each other, and a lot of them have studied with each other. Which I find very interesting too. So. I have not tasted this. This was
going to be your maiden voyage. I get a lot of vanilla and caramel for sure.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is coming from Louisville, and we can talk about this in a second when we actually get into your programs at the spots here in Tulsa. But you were saying you did a bunch of whiskey/bourbon pairings as far as like coursed meals and stuff, which has to be. I was going to say difficult, but maybe not if you're around it so much. Because here you're used to wine pairings and beer pairings.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I went to your Stellum, which we'll have in a minute, Stellum and Barrel pairing, which it blew my mind. It's like, you can actually pair food with bourbon too. It's not just
absolutely
a sipper for dessert.
Absolutely, I mean, I think it's definitely unique. I think that you're exactly right. I think that when you're around bourbon or you're in bourbon country, it's like. There's so much around you. There's so much that I think even the rest of the nation doesn't really get to experience until you're there. And I find it interesting because there are some people that really put it on a pedestal in a way where you respect it, in a way where you're not like, you know what, I need a shot. Like you never hear anyone shooting bourbon.
Right. Nor should you.
Right. Okay. But you never hear it. Like you never ever hear it. And I think what's interesting is like a lot of times it's just like for what I experienced, everyone would respect it until Derby. And then you would have all these people coming in from Derby
taking
and
shots
they
of
would
Woodford
just
Reserve all over the place.
And it was just a mess. And it was like, to me, I was just like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And so I think that what's interesting about it is when you really look at it, and you look at the science behind it, the passion behind it, the drive behind it, you notice that like everyone is such a family, and you start building relationships with these people. You start cooking for these people, and they tell you stories like when they couldn't move bourbon, in the 80s and the 90s. And so it's like, well, you keep on talking and the years keep going by that you're not selling it. And it's like, wow. And they go through the process of like even having to like, go ahead and bottle in unique vessels. That's why when you see like, hey, we're going to serve this in a train, or we're going to serve this. It's just like, they were just trying to figure out how to move it, and I think that it's like one of those things that's like, wow. But there's so much education behind it, and there's so much beauty behind it, that I think that it's really interesting to see the movement now.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, taste that and tell me where your mind goes. And I don't know how quickly that this works for you, but for an initial pairing that comes to mind, because to me, and I'm curious to try it with capers, if you think that'd be a good one to try with some capers, because to me, bourbon always reminds me of dessert. And whether it's the caramel, the vanilla, a little bit of the oakiness, I'm not sure, but I always, in my mind, if I'm thinking like, what should I eat with this? It's going to be something sweet. But what you were saying with seafood and stuff, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I can see that. To some degree, I think that, bourbon tends to have, your caramel flavor, nutty flavor, vanilla, cinnamon. But I lean towards too is like sometimes you can try something that will have like coriander, cardamom. To me, like if you're gonna find a bourbon that has like a gem, you're looking for like star anise. Star anise is almost like that licoricey, right? You get that, and you better grab it. Like when we used to do barrel picks, if we got a barrel pick and we're like got a little bit of that star anise, we're like, can I get that barrel?
I want that whole thing.
Yeah. When we picked with Jimmy and Eddie Russell, it was so amazing because you watch generation after generation. So, Jimmy has worked his face off. That's Eddie's dad at Wild Turkey. And then Eddie, is doing as well. So that's why, Eddie has Russells and Jimmy has like, 101 and Kentucky Spirit. And it was fun because you pick with them and, it would be, okay, you'd pick with, Eddie and Jimmy, but Eddie first. And so you would taste, 15, 20 barrels. Yeah. And after you taste 15, 20 barrels, you get Jimmy looking at you going,
are you standing straight at that point? You're
like, well, yeah. We would spit most of the time, because you're always
similar to a wine.
Yeah, similar to wine. Exactly. And you're just really looking for the different notes in the barrel. So you're looking at like what's in the beginning. Sometimes when a barrel is real damp, the very, very middle of the bourbon's missing.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's almost like you have the beginning and you have the finish, but you don't have the middle.
Right.
And it just gets real unique. And so you can really start diving into savory flavors. What I was saying though is like when you're looking at picking with Jimmy would always look at you after you taste with Eddie and be like, all right, guys, you ready to taste some bourbon now? And you're like, I just tasted 20 barrels. And it's like, he was just talking a lot of trash to his son, Sure. But it was always incredible because I was very, very fortunate. I got to taste with a lot of amazing people that have great palates and really have taken food and beverage extremely professional. And so we would always... we would always be entertained or educated with the honey barrel is what they would call it. Sure. And so we'd always get to taste a barrel that was like literally in the corner of the rick house that would be like 50% angel share. And it was just like, okay, now we're going to try this. And then Jimmy would look at me and be like, yo, want it?
Yes, like, please.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, are you serious? And then you're trying to think about like, you respect it so much, it's like you don't want it to move too fast off the shelf at your restaurant, So then it's like, how do we educate even further? So how do we get that story to our guests, and then how do we let them know that this is super, super unique, where they're not going to try this ever again? And so that's where I think that a lot of people that are into bourbon, it is about picking. Constantly, and it's like some barrels are better than others. And it depends on the rick house, and also depends on the floor, depends if it's rotated. I mean let me tell you, it's interesting because I've been at Buffalo Trace and I've seen where Pappy's picked, and if you've seen that, it'd blow your absolute mind, and they don't do anything. They don't rotate. Yeah. It's just sitting there, and you're like, man, it must be in the sweet spot of Kentucky.
Right. There's no argument there. It is the sweet spot. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is. So I'm curious. So you get here, you're called here, you pray on it, you come to Tulsa. What is the process for you like when you go to a new kitchen? Not only a new part of the country, a new state, a new city, but you walk into a kitchen. I'm assuming you don't want to come in and being like, all right, we're going to change this, 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 and this. I'm assuming there's a learning process of learning the current menu, seeing what works, what doesn't, learning the clientele, what they like to eat, what they don't, where you think you can push them, and then what slowly rolling out kind of your vision.
It's interesting because I think that there was if you look at different times in my career, there's different approaches. And I think that, one time your approach may be, it may be like, hey, we got to get this done. For me, it was about the people. I think that now it became that very, very upfront because
people
I think
in the kitchen or people in the restaurant?
People in general.
Okay.
Because I had to think about everything, and I thought about when I walked into Lowood after coming on board, I thought about the owners. I thought about the owners of, when I think about Chip and Noah, I think, man, they've been through a lot. I know because I had that experience of going through a lot as well with COVID, and having to deal with the PPP and letting people go and just a lot of what ifs, no one knows what the future is at that time. And so I think about the owners, I think about the cooks, I think about the servers, I think about the managers. I think about everyone that's actually in the place and how do you inspire and how do you get people excited again, in the restaurant business. And at the same time, like that you do that is like, how does the guest feel it? How does the guest feel a different level of hospitality right now than they've ever felt in their entire life going out to eat? And I think that when you think about all three, you have to be intentional and think about all three every single day. So like, even when I'm teaching people how to create dishes, or I'm thinking about pairings, or I'm just thinking about the hospitality experience, I literally am thinking about every single thing from the beginning to the end. I'm thinking about like, when my cook cooks this dish, is he going to respect the farm? Is it going to build his confidence? At the same time, is this going to build his confidence? Am I going to be able to show these people Jesus, why I'm cooking every single day? Am I going to show these people hospitality? Am I going to go ahead and show these people who I am, but at the same time, at the end of the day, show everybody love? And I think that is like the biggest challenge. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because every one of us has our off days. We have things that frustrate us. We have things that, that are like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, these prices are going up. Why? You know what I mean? Like,
right, sure.
You have all these different variables, but at the end of the day, it's like, my approach is literally every single day, like, how am I going to go into each business and love these people and then also progress at every single location? And I think that it's a different approach, but I hope it's an approach that that rubs off.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, how would you define your leadership style in the kitchen?
I am super, super organized.
Okay. I feel like most chefs have to be, right?
No.
Is that not? Should be. Most chefs should be. Okay. Yeah.
I think I'm super, super organized. I'm very transparent, and I teach a lot.
Okay.
Like over and over and over again. I mean, I've even had guests that will pull me aside and say, hey, by the way, we've eaten here 6 times. We like coming here and we just think like, wow, we can't believe how much that you teach. And I'm like, wow, someone noticed that.
Yeah.
It's like, but that's what I mean by love, is because that's a sign of love.
Sure.
And so I think that it's
imparting
like,
into others. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of what that's what my direction is, and that's my leadership skill, is that, and that's why I continue to practice. It's like, how can I continue to teach on a constant basis?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty chill. Like, I'm very detailed. Very, very detailed, because I do believe that that everything matters.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
that's a great answer. Do you feel like that menu's yours now?
I don't want it to be.
Okay. Let's dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
I think that in my 20s and my 30s, I wanted the menu to be mine. And I think that some of that was my ego.
Okay. Are we saying the same thing when we say that? So what do you mean by the menu being yours?
The menu being mine is that every dish has to be me.
Okay. that kind of was where I was going. Like you feel like your handprint is on the menu now.
Yeah. I think that I always want to teach and I always want to inspire. I always want to go ahead and show people how to create dishes, whether it's flavor profiles, whether it's, it's like when I talk about being creative and thinking about that process, it's a lot of different directions, because it could be like, what does the animal eat? Are we going to put that on the plate as well? Are we talking about,
cool.
Are we talking about, longitude? Are we talking about a country? Are we talking about local? Are we talking about technique driven? So we're talking about all these different variables. And so when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about that when I teach, I want other people to be inspired. So my goal is to be able to produce, dishes, but at the same time have other people produce where I'm more of a coach, where I'm able to go ahead and say like, hey, what are you coming out with, chef? And then say, have you thought about this technique, or have you thought about this ingredient, or let me show you something that, just whether it's a different farm, a different olive oil, a different ingredient, whatever, that may, or even, it could even be a different piece of equipment, that can be used. So yeah,
that's interesting. And so I'm curious if you were to, if someone was coming to Lowood that hasn't had your food before, and they asked you, hey, describe your food for me in one word. What would you
in
pick?
one word?
One word. What would you pick?
Man,
the bourbon might help you. I don't know.
I think that, one word is hard. One word is really, really, really challenging because I don't know if I can actually say it's one word.
Okay.
But I can say that
one feeling, one thought.
Yeah. I mean, the thought process is that, when I think about food, I'm always trying to use like when you say like Lowood, it's the best ingredients first. And I think that, when I think about the best ingredients and I think about that process from beginning to end, I go back to like hospitality. Hospitality is it's a word that cares about everything. And I think that if you're thinking about like what is food is hospitality, and I think that if thinking about it being one word, that would be probably the word that does come to me is hospitality.
I like that.
So yeah.
And I don't know if you aligned perfectly with Lowood or if it just seems like a match made in heaven, because even prior to you taking over at Lowood, I thought the hospitality, the customer service at Lowood was top notch.
That's awesome.
And so hearing that be like what you hang your hat on, and then coming to a place where I felt like it was already high.
That's good.
It seems like a perfect mesh. Do you feel like you've had to do a lot to up the hospitality there, or was it already kind of what you
I think
what you liked?
I think it's a constant progression. I don't know if it's a up. I don't know if it's to me, it's a constant progression, because I think that that's what we're all trying to do. Because whether we're talking about Lowood or whether we're talking about a restaurant in Dallas or a restaurant in California or wherever, I think that all restaurants are trying to produce hospitality are all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to progress every single day, or even every single week of like, what are we going to do to focus on the details, and the details could be like, what wine are we going to be bringing in because it goes with this dish, or this guest really loves this rosé. So like if this guest really loves this rosé, how many different selections of rosé can we bring in so that this guest could see? Maybe there's 4 different selections now, and then also, and you're also thinking about different dishes and stuff like that too on a constant basis, because like what you talked about, earlier, like squash blossom, the squash blossom was something that was brought in for a special. And then we're like, okay, we'll bring it in again. We'll do it as a special again. And then now we're like, maybe we need to put it on the menu.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, but you also let your guest make that decision for you at times,
Sure.
So, I think that it's a constant progression for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One more food question, then let's try I thought the rye might go best with the cookie.
Sure.
That was my thought process.
I agree.
My chef's pairing in my mind
chef.
was that.
Okay,
so
chef.
we'll see. We'll see where we go.
Chef.
So last food question. We've talked about the food culture in Louisville.
Yep.
We've kind of sort of hit on it in Tulsa. How would you compare the two? How would you compare the food communities, the culture, just the love of food in the two different cities?
You know, it's interesting because I haven't got to experience Tulsa yet, like pre-COVID. Okay.
Yeah.
And I do hear great stories. Like I hear like tight knit community and, you know, everyone knows each other and stuff like that. And I do have some example of that because I've had some chefs come into Lowood. I've cooked for them. They've been just as hospitality driven and excited. Where I've been there with my wife on date night and they've like literally like rolled out the red carpet.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
You're like, wow, this is amazing, you know. And at the same time, Louisville was the same way. You know, it's just that Louisville had so many. It was just Louisville was more muddled because it has a lot more restaurants.
Yep.
So you have like a ton of independent restaurants, and then you have a ton of chain restaurants, and then here you don't really have a ton of chain restaurants.
No, South Tulsa has a few.
That's
but
right.
This part of town is all
That's
you
right.
know, independent.
So that's what's so different.
Okay.
So that's the biggest difference is like Louisville just has tons of restaurants, but it also has a lot of, I mean, that's where the home of Yum Brands is, you know? So
True. Yeah.
It's like,
For those that don't know what that's, Taco Bell, KFC. Was there one more?
yeah, I mean, it probably is.
There probably is.
There's probably
Yeah.
5 more, you know?
Yeah.
It's,
For a minute, they sponsored the Derby.
oh yeah, well
Yeah.
there you go. You know, it's connected. You know, so
Yeah.
but that's the thing is, so that's the thing about the biggest difference that I see as far as restaurants. But you know, I think the cuisine, and I think that the care is the same that I see. You know, and I think that's what's exciting. I like the farmers market here better.
Do you?
I do.
love the farmers market too. So
I
don't
do.
get me wrong, but that surprises me because Louisville's such a, what you talk about, so many restaurants, so many.
Yeah, but Louisville has too many tiny farmers markets.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's got like it may have 25 farmers markets going on in one day.
Yeah. Then
But
you're
they're
pulling from each
spread
other
everywhere,
and,
and like you don't know who's where, and
Right,
it's
right.
complicated. Here, it's the same people that are there. It's growing, and it's exciting because, like I said, you know, you can go there and you know that you're gonna get. It's great to like go, like last year at this time when I first moved here, and then you go back even a year later, and you're like, oh, it's growing. So there's like, oh, I can get quail eggs, and I can get fresh quail, and you know, it's like you're like,
Right.
wait a minute, wow, this is cool, this is different, you know. So you see things growing at the same time. You see the other farms that are still producing phenomenal products, and so it's like one of those things where you're like, man, I am very, very, very blessed to be here because I can use all these ingredients. I mean, I can produce a bok choy dish that blows people's mind just because I have a good ingredient.
Yeah.
That literally I drove 15 minutes to get. Not even that.
All right.
10 minutes, you know? So I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
I lied. I have one more food question. So how do you balance pushing the boundaries on a menu and introducing, whether it be a protein, a specific thing, or just almost like a group of dishes, a style of food that a community, a city might not be used to? How do you balance, you know, respecting what people like to eat? You know, Oklahoma's known as a steak and potatoes type state, which I don't think is true for Tulsa, but that's the reputation probably nationally. But then we have Justin Thompson opening a Nordic cuisine restaurant here in a couple weeks, and there's you know, there's a bunch of different avenues of different things to try. So for you, is there a place? How do you work within that? And then is there a place you want to take? You know, something you want to introduce to Tulsa that you don't see around many of the menus right now?
Wow. All right. Loaded question.
It was. That was a big one. We can take it one at a time. So how do you balance wanting to push the envelope versus respecting?
So as far as that first, I would say that like I show a lot of restraint and I also teach restraint.
Okay.
I think it's very, very important. I try to focus on ingredients and I also focus on the guest. I mean, you know, right now we all know just how inflation is. We all know pricing. We all know everything that's going on. Every single business feels it in America, you know, if not the world. And so I think that like when I'm teaching, I am teaching technique. I am teaching cost. I am teaching restraint. I am teaching, what we do that is unique. I also want to be able to produce something always on the plate that someone cannot do at home.
Okay.
Because if I'm able to produce something, whether I'm using an ingredient, technique, and you can't do it at home, then it's a value.
100%.
And you're like, wow. And then if I'm respecting culture on top of that, then it's a win. And I think that's the number one thing that I talk about a lot in the kitchen is like, we're going to respect culture. I mean, and with saying that is like, when you're asking a question like, what do I want to do? As far as food goes, sure. I mean, for me, it's to me, it's respecting culture. It's like, if we're going to do a European influenced restaurant, let's do European influenced restaurant. Let's focus on a menu that people can come in with their friends and family and share and have an experience. And, where they're drinking wine, they're eating food, they're having a great time. Like that's Europe, right. That's Europe for sure. But my thing is, it's all about respecting culture. So no matter what the future looks like, whether I was going to do, a fish house or a hot dog stand or sure. whatever, it just has to be super, super respectful towards the culture. It has to be done extremely proper, proper technique. But as far as me, I mean, I always have lots of dreams, Sure. I think the first thing that I think about a lot is just, just progressing with the company that I'm with right now, and just like, how can I go ahead and continue to build it, in a way where they can go ahead and say, man, this is great. Like, wow, we can't believe we're on the other side of COVID and where we're at. And I think that it's been amazing because like just being here for a year, watching us, the whole team, like build, that's what's nice about my position too, is being able to see different outlets and you're watching each one of them progress. You're watching, different employees even progress within that position, and then you're also watching people elevate with their cooking as well. So when you continue to do that, I just think that like my job's not done.
I love that.
It's a lot of work. It's exciting, but I think that like I want to continue to watch everyone progress, and to be part of it where I can continue to teach, and that's going to be, I love cooking vegetables. I mean, you'll see, over at Lowood, I'll go ahead and I'll have, 3 or 4 vegetable dishes going at once. Sometimes I want 6 or 7,
Man, that mushroom dish, I was there. That was like last week or so. Yeah. I think I had that mushroom dish.
Okay,
Dude, come on.
Yeah, the lion's,
get out of here with that.
Lion's mane.
That was so good.
The lion's mane and pistachio.
Yep.
Some green onion. We it's amazing because like literally 80% of that dish comes from the market.
That's awesome.
And it's exciting. I actually had one lady send it back.
Really?
Yeah, she was vegan. She sent it back. She said, "It's got to be chicken." I said, "That's the best compliment I've ever had in my life."
Go give her a hug. Yeah.
I was like, and she wouldn't take it back. She was like, She's like, "No, this is chicken," and it was vegan. I was like,
"It was a mushroom."
It's a mushroom dish called lion's mane.
Oh, that's so funny.
So that's the thing is like, I love vegetables, and I mean that's why I'm gonna continue to focus on a lot of vegetables. I think that we need more vegetables on more menus.
I agree with that.
So yeah.
And I love like brisket and meat and all of it. But
yeah, me too.
But I'm with you. Like there are nights and days and sometimes weeks where I'll look back and be like, I haven't had meat in a minute.
Yeah.
Depending on what's at the market, what time of year it is, all that kind of stuff.
It's true.
I love cooking vegetables. I keep having more food questions. I promise I'm going to get to family and we can start to wrap up because I know you're busy.
You're good.
But is there a mindset difference for you? Because you talked about progressing and pushing forward with the company you're in now and all those restaurants. Is there a mindset difference at all when you're working in a place that you own, that is yours, that you have equity in, versus working in a place where you're working for other people? And if that's too personal of a question, you don't have to answer it.
No. So, this is good.
Yeah.
All right. So, one second.
You're good. Yeah. That's the bourbon will do that.
All right. So, yes and no. So I'll tell you that before I owned a restaurant, I would say big difference.
Okay.
Because I operate, excuse me, I operate every restaurant. Like,
I was looking, I thought I had water for you.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. So I operated every single restaurant like it was mine. And that was my mentality growing up. I was like, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to go, push. And I feel like, obviously, that wasn't the best approach, but I worked real hard and continue to push. But the thing is that I didn't know payroll. I didn't know taxes. Okay. As in depth. Yeah, you know how to build schedules, you know how to do this, blah, blah, blah. But there's lots of things you don't know behind the scenes. And the thing is you know, there's all these different operation thoughts. And when you own a place, you're always trying to like figure out how to like build it in a way where you'll have more time off, you know, but you also have like work-life balance. And I think there's possibilities there too. But now when I went from owning a restaurant to working with this group, what's amazing is that I have that approach, you know, where I'm able to look at it as literally like protecting their business, you know, and not only like protecting, but like literally looking at all the details, you know, that I probably wouldn't have looked at before. So it's been interesting to go ahead and go from like not owning a restaurant to owning a restaurant to not owning a restaurant.
Right, yeah.
It's unique. It's super, super unique. So it's interesting because I'm always thinking about the details and I'm always thinking about progression. So, but I try to have more of a, you know, more of a life balance now.
Sure. Yeah.
Which can be challenging at times, you know, especially when you're building. But it's getting there. It's getting there. It's getting strong. So
I want to ask you about family life here in a second. I'm going to pour this stellum a little bit as you answer this question. If you were to pinpoint a inspiration right now from a chef standpoint, for me, it's always Tony Bourdain. I love Anthony Bourdain to death, you know, R.I.P. Do you draw inspiration from other chefs, and are there a couple that stand out when you think of that?
You know, it's like it's interesting that you say that because I think about character first, and I think about you know, influence. And when I think about character and influence, there's a lot that comes into that, and it comes into like, you know, loving people, and so when I think about people like that, I mean, when I was growing up, you know, it's interesting because I thought about people that were in the spotlight, but then also were doing so much for the American culture, like Thomas Keller. Right. You know, Thomas Keller to me is,
speaking of the French Laundry.
Right. Yeah. It's like he's done so much that's been very, very helpful just for like everybody. I mean, every cook, every dishwasher, every hostess, host, like every single person that's affiliated with that restaurant just has stronger standards for hospitality now, you know? And so I look at people like that, but then I also look at the OGs, you know, like a Jacques Pepin, you know, like being able to look at someone like that knows more technique than anyone is really inspiring. And so when I think about inspiring, it's like, you think about people like Jacques Pepin that can, like, you know, be his age and do stuff in his sleep.
What is he, like his 70s now? 80s?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, the great thing is that he's still open. He's still open to teach. He's very, very giving, you know? And so, like, those are the people that I'm inspired by because, I mean, that's my goal. You know, my goal for my life is to be able to be, you know, hospitality driven, but that I can do something with purpose, you know, where I can inspire younger people, you know, to be excited, to focus on, you know, hospitality, but then also to focus on culture, to focus on just love with every single dish. And I think that's the thing is, like, when you are in different kitchens or different restaurants, depending on where you live or whatever city, you'll run into cooks that are just going through the flow, you know. But I think about people in life, you know, sometimes people just like going through the flow,
absolutely.
You know? And for me, it's like, you know, I want to be able to do something with purpose where everyone's excited, doing something different, doing something unique, you know, where people are like, okay, he ain't scared, but no one else is either.
Right,
You know?
right. I love that.
Yeah.
I'll give you a Thomas Keller story. So I was in Napa eating at French Laundry, and after dinner, the waiter, we had made friends, and he asked if we wanted a tour, you know, of the restaurant. And this just speaks to chef's attention to detail. So he takes us around, takes us into the kitchen. And I wasn't expecting, I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting him to be there. I don't know why. It just didn't cross my mind.
Okay.
But I didn't see him. So I was like, all right, cool. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw, so there was a big flat screen TV up on the wall. And on the TV in the picture was another kitchen.
Right.
And so he has his back turned.
Per se.
He had his back turned to us.
Yep.
And he was watching a live stream of Per Se. And something happened when he was watching, and he took out his phone and started berating someone in New York City
For sure.
at Per Se because they were doing something wrong.
Yep.
They weren't paying attention to enough detail, doing something on this one dish. That's incredible. Like that attention to detail to be, I mean, I don't know, is French Laundry Michelin star? I'm not sure if it is or not, but award winning for sure.
For sure, Michelin. Yep.
And then to have that on such lockdown that you can also be enough attention to detail to be watching via a monitor another restaurant in New York, like it just blew my mind.
Absolutely. I mean, and it is, I mean, it's fascinating because I think that would probably be the only way that you could do it, you know, to be across your country, you know, it's like, it's unbelievable, you know, even, you know, I've been able to walk the kitchen Per Se in New York and just look at all the attention to detail that they have for the cooks is impeccable.
Yeah, it's unreal. All right, so let's talk cookies and Stellum Rye real quick.
All right.
And then I want to ask you a couple questions about your family, and I'll let you get out of here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Those cookies look amazing.
Yes.
They're like, I asked you earlier if they're like muffin cookie hybrids because they're so thick.
Yeah.
How did you make those?
So these are snickerdoodle. It's we cook these actually in a little mini cast iron.
Okay.
The goal is like we want to really aerate. You know, we want to aerate this dough. We want to go ahead and say like how light and how fluffy can we possibly get this to the point where we're trying to go back to the original. You know, the original snickerdoodle. Oh, and man. So that's where we're at.
That's really good. Is it unique to be a chef in your position and also bake and also do pastry?
I don't know. I don't think about it a lot.
Okay.
I love food.
Yeah.
You know, so
I feel like you hear of pastry chefs and then like executive chefs. Very rarely in my mind are they like intertwined.
Yeah, right? I think that it's interesting because I think a lot of people they're afraid of it. I love dough. So like I've had art exhibits in the past and they would be like, hey, can you pick one piece? Like one piece of art and tie it to what you think about food. And I never forget, I looked and I was like, I see those hands. And I was like, hands. Because one of the number one practices in food is touch, right?
Sure.
So if you're handling dough, there's a certain feeling. When you're making pasta, when you're making bread, when you're making gnocchi, when you're making, a cookie, it doesn't matter what kind of dough you're handling that dough. There's a feeling. And especially in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That humidity will get you.
The humidity is intense. Yeah. And so it's a different thing. And I'm going to be real. It's like, I had a bakery in Louisville, Kentucky. And I had great pastry chefs and super, super talented, but I didn't have the humidity issue. It is a real thing.
Yeah.
And
step outside today.
It's Tulsa
real.
hot. It's a different kind of hot.
Right.
It's like being in a microwave some days, I feel. Like when I go outside, I'm like, oh.
So I want to go back inside.
This is how it feels to step into a microwave.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about dough. And that's what I love about teaching and talking about the feeling of dough is because, you just don't see enough because there's so much machines now. There's so many machines that produce this mass-produced product that a lot of people never get to experience a handmade product. You know, and so whenever you're able to like truly experience a handmade product, you're like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's real.
That's exactly. Yeah. It's a strange word to use
real.
for that, but it
Right.
is. It's like,
It's real.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my wife, she makes fun of me a little bit because there was a point in our marriage where I'd be like, oh, that's real. Oh, that's real. You know, it's like, because every single thing, you could have a real taco or not a real taco. You could have a real burger or not a real burger. You know, it'd be like, it's either real or it's not, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think about that a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, real quick. What's the rye you brought?
So this is Stellum. So what's interesting about this is that I was in about, I bet you I was with the company for like 3 months. And I walk in and Noah is sitting there and Noah is doing this barrel tasting. And I look over, I'm like, what is he doing? I've never done a barrel tasting like that before because I've always been like on site. I'm like spoiled, right? So, and then he's like, oh, I'm doing this tasting. I'm like, oh, that's how they do it here.
And that's when they send you the little, like what, ounce and a half to 2 ounce little samples.
It's interesting. It's cool though. It's different. And so I'm like, what are you tasting? He's like, Stellum. And I'm like, no way. My old beverage director, Nick Christensen, she works for Barrel. She is she's like master blender for them. So she does everything for them now. And they're the ones that came out with Stellum.
That's fantastic.
So I actually tasted Stellum before Stellum came out.
VIP over there.
So it was really cool. So I got to taste this and it was cool because, you know, I was like, this is the one that I would pick. And Noah was like, this is the one I would pick too. And so it was one of those things where it was like, wow, this is cool. And it's different. I mean, and I have had Stellum, but I never had the Stellum rye.
Right.
So this is a Stellum rye. It's really, really cool. I mean, you know, when you look at what we just tried, you got, you know, you have more of the blonde, light coriander, a little lemon peel, a lot of vanilla. That's what we had. And then now,
I think my chef's pairing with that cookie was spot on, by the way. Tell me I'm wrong once you try them together.
Because you get that, you know, cinnamon note, nutmeg. This is more of your baking spices.
I mean, technically it was your chef's pairing. You brought them, but yeah.
But it's fun. It's a little fruity too.
It is.
That's what's cool is like you got a little bit of cherry.
Like that dark fruit, yeah.
Yeah, little roasted stone fruits. But that's why I get excited about it. But it's cool to be able to, like, that was like so interesting that I was able to move. And then literally that was the very first that I tasted.
Spoil you a little bit.
So it's kind of cool.
Right away, yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to bring that today is to, like, you know, showcase this because I think it's absolutely amazing. It's definitely unique. Not everyone gets to try it. And at the same time, you know, what's nice about these cookies is like, you know, what's fun about this pairing is like you can go to Lowwood. We bake this off in our wood fire oven, this cookie. And then we saute some strawberries in this Rasa Hanu spice simple syrup. And then we pour that over there and then we put some strawberry ice cream over the top. So think about that.
With it. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's kind of silly.
I mean, come on.
So,
is that an Indian spice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's got your Tai Long peppercorns. It's got your star anise. It's got your lavender. So yeah, moving in that direction.
If you've stuck with us this long, go to Lowwood and try that because that's what I'm doing probably this weekend. Let's talk family real quick. You mentioned your wife a couple times. How many kids do you guys have?
4.
4 kids.
4 girls.
4 girls. You're swimming in a sea of estrogen.
Man, my wife is amazing. Like, I can't even express how amazing my wife is.
Yeah? What makes you say that?
It's because it's interesting, like, the support. The teacher that she is. Just how she's almost like her own director. Because when you look at how she directs the whole family, it's like she's a big part of how our girls are raised, you know, what our girls are eating, how our girls are dressed, the details of like, she puts everyone first. And she's amazing. She's beautiful. You look at my wife, you can be like, yep, he married up.
Outkick your coverage.
Sure.
Yep.
Like, I don't even know how that happened. I'm used to it now because I've been married for 12 years. Like, they look at me and they look at my wife. They're like, huh? I'm like,
Yep.
I think it's just because I can cook. Like,
that's probably a lot to do with it, right? Like,
but yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. I mean, we get up every single day together. We have habits. You know, our habits are, you know, I get up in the morning. We read the Bible together. We pray together. After that, it's like, it's on, you know, it's workout. I work out Monday through Friday. And then after workout, it's head to the restaurant, you know, and I'm usually at the restaurant by like 8:30, 9. But we have good habits, you know. Sure. And I'll be real, man. Like, my wife is good at keep me on, you know, she keeps me on those habits more than I keep her, but we have each other to keep each other on those habits. And it's good because there's some days she'll wake me up. She's like, it's 5:30. You got to get up. And I'm like, why?
I'm so comfortable.
Why do I have to get up right now? And it's great because, like, I'll be like, 5 minutes. Because you know how I always do 5 minutes. I'm like, 5 minutes. Everyone's like 5. I'm like, 5 minutes. And then she'll be like, okay. She comes back in there 5 minutes later. She's like, you got to get up. I'm like, yes, ma'am. I get up. And it's amazing. I mean, it's like coffee. It's just like, I mean, everything that she does. And she's, you know, she's my biggest fan and my biggest critic. You know, she's the one that's going to be like, hey, you know, I know what you're doing, but she's going to let me know. She's great. She's great when I'm trying to bounce off leadership with her. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'm trying to lead this way. And then she'll be like, well, you know, try this or maybe try that. And I think it's great because, like, you know, I say, you know, when you love people and you care for people, and you're trying to introduce that in your leadership, and you're trying to make that the total point of your leadership, sometimes you get hit, you know, you get burnt a little bit, you get pushed a little bit, and you got to figure out how to lead and still figure out like how to lead and still love, even though that people may be even taking advantage of you a little bit, you know? And I think that she's great there as well. So she's like that, you know, she's like that well-rounded, you know, she's like that VIP, that captain, that just, I mean, she's just it, man. And she knows food, you know, she knows food. And I think that what's amazing is like when you're going to raise our kids the way that you do, and you're just well-rounded the way she is, I mean, I can't tell you anything that she does wrong. And now if it was 6 years ago, I could tell you all kinds of things, you know, because it's a big difference between being 6 years married and 12 years married. But being 12 years married, man, it's like it's every single aspect, because I do believe it takes two different perspectives, or even the same perspective of holding each other accountable to progress, you know, in what we're doing, whether it's you know, dating each other and showing each other love in different ways. You know, like my wife would buy me a pair of socks, and I'd be like, oh, thank you so much, like, because I'm grateful. Like, I'm like, she didn't have to go out of her way and think about buying me a pair of socks. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, when I cook, my wife is always like, every single time I cook, man, my wife will look at my girls and be like, now let's go ahead and tell daddy thank you for cooking. And it just shows like she's appreciative, everyone's appreciative, but it's all about like, we're just always constantly trying to celebrate each other.
I love that.
You know, and so I think that
sounds like a healthy relationship.
Super healthy.
Yeah.
Super healthy. And she's fine. So,
I mean, that doesn't hurt, right? That doesn't hurt.
I'm just saying, like, sometimes I'm like, someone looks at my wife, I'm like, I understand, just don't look twice, you know?
I love that. We'll wrap with this. Of your 4 girls, do you see that creativeness that's required to be in the kitchen? Do you see them, any of them or all of them, gravitating towards maybe a life in customer service in the kitchen world?
It's interesting because I don't know yet. I'm teaching a lot, so I bring Copeland to the farm. Excuse me. So I bring Copeland to the farmer's market sometimes, and I'm teaching her. Like I'm teaching her about. That's my oldest. She's 8, and so so Copeland Pearl, she's like a vegan that eats bacon. Okay. And so I'm like, girl, I get it. And so
who doesn't like bacon though?
Right.
Come on.
Right. So she's cool. She's into it. She wants to learn. So that's kind of where she's at. I'm not sure about her though. She doesn't like to get hot. You know, she's a kid. She's 8 years old.
Yeah.
You know? My 6-year-old, which is Pfeiffer Grace, Pfeiffer eats everything. I made her, you know, smoked lamb, green curry. You know, and she crushed it.
All about
it.
Like
she's like, Daddy, I'll eat anything. And she's like my best eater. And she's cool. She wants to learn. So it's kind of fun because like on some Sunday afternoons or Monday afternoons, I'll have 3 kids or 2 kids in the kitchen with me. And one person's like picking parsley. The other person's like, you know, picking beans or whatever, or shucking corn or whatever. Like I got kids doing different things, just trying to help them build a relationship with food. And then my third, which we adopt, our 2 youngest are adopted, and that's Winter Olivia and Waverly Rose. And Winter Olivia is my 3-year-old. She just eats meat.
Okay.
She's my meat eater. Make you feel uncomfortable. She'll crush an 8-ounce filet and be like, I want more. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like
you're not that big.
You're not right. Where's it going? So I think that's amazing about her. And then obviously my little tiny one, she's just now starting to eat, you know. But as they grow, I want to continue to show them food. I want to continue to show them how to focus on tying food and hospitality. And you know, I think that it'd be healthy for them to be involved in any way that they want. Sure. I want to be able to be, you know, supportive, no matter what, you know, whether they're like, hey, I want to be in this business or not. I'm going to be, you know, like whatever I can do to help them out, you know? But it's interesting. It is interesting to watch them just lean towards different avenues when it comes to food right now.
I love that.
Yeah. And my wife is great. My wife, I mean, she buys the best ingredients. I mean, she's like, it's interesting eating healthy today because, and I don't know if I need to go too into it. I just don't understand a lot of it. Like, I don't understand how a lot of people's definition of what a healthy practice is towards what they're consuming. But I do.
No, this is an interesting topic of conversation.
But I do understand that a lot of people want to be healthy. They just don't know how to be healthy.
That's a very true statement.
And
they think they're being healthy,
even if they're not.
And
a lot of it, you know, is like, you know, plant-based is a new thing. You know, it was all plant-based. Be like, yeah, but be careful with it because you may not want to eat that. Or what about the diets that people are like, meal prep? I'm going to eat the same thing every single day. Like, that ain't healthy either. Your body's not designed to eat the same thing every single day.
Right.
Maybe for a week or 2 to drop 6 or 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, to me, the healthiest thing is balance.
Healthy is 100%. Right. To me, it's all about whole food.
Yeah.
It's whole food and staying away from sugar, staying away from like modified sugar, modified sodium, bad fats. Like, there's lots of variables there, right? Because you're like, well, wait a minute, now you're getting into it too deep, right?
Sure.
And it's because
it's a rabbit hole you can get lost in. Yeah,
it is. But at the same time, stay whole food, stay natural salt, real salt, sea salt, just sea salt. Don't do anything but sea salt. And then if you go maple, coconut sugar, honey, you're good there.
Yeah.
Right. Besides that, it's like just stay whole food. Stay whole food, watch everything drop. Be careful, know your body, get some good training. It's like because I think a lot of people, they try to do too much too fast.
Yeah.
Just like everything else, we want instant results, right?
Well, it's like the people that watch that go to the gym once a month and then watch a infomercial on some Navy SEAL training, and they're like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on now.
But that person's been doing it for 7 or 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
And at the same time they're doing it for 7 or 10 years, they're doing it disciplined and consistent.
Right.
It's like, and I think that's the thing is like for me, I eat really, really well. So I eat really, really well now. But I will say that I do think that part of how you feel is 70% is your diet, if not 60% is your diet. But I always say anywhere between 60 and 70% is your diet, and the 30 to 35% fitness. Work out, and some people have different things. Like I'm not a runner. Mm-hmm. You tell me to run, you better scare me.
Something better be chasing me.
You better scare me. But I'll bike. So it's like I'll bike 10 miles. I don't mind biking 10 miles. I'll do that every day if you want me to. That's fine. But my thing is like you have to be intentional. Yeah. So but that's so that's the thing with my wife. I think my wife does a really, really good job cooking. She cooks eggs, she cooks breakfast. She shops really, really well. She makes sure that everyone's eating healthy, and she doesn't buy anything bad for the kids. So
that's the tricky part, man.
There's no
almost 90% of the things marketed towards kids are not healthy.
Well, there's no artificial flavor in my house, so there's no artificial colors. There's no dyes. Yeah, my kid's not eating dyes. My kid's not doing that because we're trying to figure out like, and then I'll be real, like every now and then, like we will be like, oh, let's stop and get that fast food.
We'll get some ice cream. We'll do this.
Get ice cream. Sure. Which I think, balance, again, what you said, balance. Yep. I think balance is good. And it's doable and it's fair and it's safe, but it doesn't lean towards your kids just needing it. Right. And I think that's very, very important because I think that a lot of times, like, kids are always like, kids are gravitated towards sugar. If you look at, our school systems, it's like sugar, sugar, sugar. Yeah. What'd you have for breakfast? Sugar. What'd you have for lunch? Sugar. And then they're going to come home. What do they want? They need more sugar.
Or else they're going to crash.
100%. Exactly. So I think that my wife, again, just being very intentional is she's always thinking about that. She's always thinking about like, what are kids eating? And to me, I'm just like, I love it because I know they're going to be healthier because of it. Right. It's like, and she continues to be that way, which is very, very important. And every now and then, she may get like the Baskin Robbins cake or something. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, there's no dye in this one. I'm like, all right, I get it, and it's good every once in a while, but like, it's not like every week.
Like a consistent thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate you doing this. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. No, this has been great. I love food and beverage. I can talk food, beverage. If you tell me to talk about food, beverage, and Jesus all day, I'd be like, we can talk about it all day. We can talk about how amazing my wife is. Yeah. We could talk about it all because the thing is, I thank God for being where I'm at today. Absolutely. And I think that it's just amazing to see. And to actually like revisit and go through the journey, like our conversation today, to be able to go through that journey and go from like my childhood all the way today, connect those dots and to know like, hey, there's a plan for everybody.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So if people want to come eat your food, where can they find you? What times? What days?
Man, I think, you look at Lowood. Lowood is Tuesday through Saturday. We open up at 5. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're open till 10. Friday, Saturday, open till 11. Over at Hodges, we open all the time. So it's like we open all the time. We got that new chicken concept going on over at Open Container. So I think that's going really, really well too. So you should check that out. We open 4 to close pretty much, through the week. But on the weekends, we do open at noon as well.
Awesome,
so, man. It's good. I think I'm excited about that chicken concept of Open Container because,
fried chicken.
We're doing fried and grilled.
All right.
But it's good. It's super, super tasty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got to go try that.
Please do.
All right, man. Thank you again.
Oh,
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the stellum, the oysters, the cookies. You spoiled us today.
Oh man, come on, man. It's a little bit. This is just us getting started. This will be. I think this will be the first of many conversations.
I love it, man.
So,
all right, we'll let you go. Appreciate you. We'll be right back after the break. Thanks again to Chef Bobby. That was a fantastic conversation. The oysters were great. The cookie was great. The Stellum Rye Bourbon was great. The Blue Note was great. And then you could just feel, I hope you could at least, I could sitting next to him, the passion and the love and just everything that he puts into what he's doing at Lowwood, at Hodges Bend, and at Open Container. So thanks once again for Chef's time, and I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. So over the next couple weeks, you should be looking out for Tasting Room Podcast with Jared Jordan, who runs the Summit Club, and Justin Thompson. I'm excited for that one. He's about to open Freya, which is a Nordic cuisine restaurant right here in Tulsa. So those two podcasts should be fun. We'll see you next time on the Tasting Room.